he gave me my sheet and it got buried.
Why did they give us a whole new?
Yeah, it just got buried underneath. I'm a little late.
It's 7:07.
Good evening, everyone. If I can get your attention, good evening. Thank you all for coming out for the zoning session September 26th. I'm glad to see a wonderful turnout. Tonight we have a full house. All of the commissioners are here. Mr. Guskus, Mr. Paul, Ms. Pepin, Mr. Giuliano, Mr. Fuller, and myself as Stephanie Phillips as chairman of the commission. So thank you all. Just a couple of administrative things so that we can get started. I think if anybody is here for the application, 211 Ferry Boulevard, that application the applicant has asked for a continuance, and that will be heard at this point in October at our October meeting. So if you're here for that application, we will not be discussing it tonight, okay? In addition to that, we have two applications that are carryover from August, which is the medical marijuana, which we will be continuing the public hearing tonight. And that's it, actually. The other one was 211. Yeah, so we just have one carryover tonight, which is the medical marijuana. So that will be on the agenda tonight. All right, I'm going to open, and these are my usual statements that I always make, so if you've been here before, you're used to this. For the record, petitions to be heard this evening were advertised in the Connecticut Post on September 13th and September 20th. These properties were duly posted on September 19th. I ask that if you have any cell phones, if you could put them on silent or vibrate, and as you leave the chamber, if you could just go into the halls or far enough away so that the chatter doesn't interfere with the applicants and the people who are speaking, so we can hear them as clearly as possible. Other than that, I welcome everybody here tonight. Thank you. We're going to do a couple of things in the agenda for those of you who have it. I know a lot of people are here for a couple of applications. Thank you. So we're going to take a couple of small applications out of order and get them done. So we're going to do number 2, which is called 239 Barnum Avenue. We're going to then go to 290 Ferry Boulevard. We'll come back around and do the medical marijuana public hearing, and then we will end the night with the text amendment, of which Ms. Pepin will take over as chairman. I hope that helps everybody know in terms of the order of the night.
Madam Chair, can I make a motion to take this out of order first?
A motion by Mr. Giuliano.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fuller. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Fuller, when we go the other way, we want to read 2339 Barnum Avenue?
Most certainly, Madam Chair. So here's the agenda item listed as number 2 on the hearing docket, 2339 Barnum Ave, petition of Rock Candy Enterprises, LLC, seeking approval of a liquor location for a grocery beer permit for a convenience store.
Thank you very much. Mr. Knott, this is your application, correct?
Yes. Madam Chairwoman, it is. Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, Ms. Pippin, Madam Secretary, members of the Commission, Mr. Bansky. My name is Barry Knott. I'm a lawyer with the firm of Knott & Dunn with offices at 1656 Main Street, Stratford. I'm here this evening on behalf of Rock Candy Enterprises, LLC, which does business as Martin's News, 2339 Barnum Avenue, Stratford, the principal and sole member of which is Ray Martin, Jr., who sits behind me in the dark shirt. This time I'd like to submit the certificates of mailing and make reference to a folder of exhibits which I've handed to each of you and to which I will be making reference during the course of my presentation. The first 2 of which are photographs of the Martin's News building, which is at the corner of Barnum Avenue and Bruce Street, across the street from where Martin's News used to be for decades. This is an application seeking approval of a liquor location to allow for the sale of beer at a grocery store. The property is located in a CA commercial zone at the corner of Barnum Avenue and Bruce, and a grocery beer permit is permitted use under sections 15.1, 15.8G of the zoning regulations, which say grocery store permits may be located in a CA, CF, LBB, and CNC district. Section 15.1 states the criteria which the Commission should look at in determining whether or not an application should be approved. It says the Commission shall take into consideration the proximity of the premises to churches, schools, libraries, public playgrounds, or any places frequented by minors, together with the number of premises having permits of any class allowing for the sale or consumption of alcoholic beverages in the immediate neighborhood. In researching the appropriateness of this application, I determined that my client's property is at least 1,250 feet away from the same class of permit. Exhibit 3 is a photograph of the little grocery store at the corner of Bruce Avenue and Hollister Street. And that little grocery store is between 1,250 and 1,500 feet away from this location. Secondly, my client's store is located approximately 1,750 feet from Holy Name Church, 2,000 feet from Franklin School, and over 1,500 feet from Clover Field, which is a town park. Certainly, these distances would indicate that this application satisfies the dictates of Section 15.1 of the zoning regulations, which I just read to you. Exhibit 4 is a copy of the plot plan for my client's property. As you can see, it's a lot containing 10,181 square feet, which is 2,681 square feet larger than the minimum lot size required in a CA zone. Additionally, building coverage is only 33.52%, where 50% coverage is allowed, so the coverage is underutilized on this property. There are 14 parking spaces on site, which are many more than required under the zoning regulations and sufficient to handle all of the uses contained in this building. I do wish to point out an error on the site plan that I just made reference to. If you look at it, you can see that there is a hatched area in the middle of the site plan, and it says proposed liquor permit location. That hatched area should be to the left in the part of the building that's on the corner. The surveyor put the hatched area on the wrong building. It should be the building to the left, which is the subject of tonight's application. Exhibit 5 is a floor plan of my client's store proposed. Currently, it's a store which specializes in the sale of cigars, cigarettes, and other tobacco products. In order for my client to be eligible for a grocery beer permit at the State Liquor Control Commission, at least 50% of the gross income of the store has to come from food sales. That is not the case now. They sell cigars and cigarettes there now. My client, his intention is to remove 2 cigar humidors and an old-fashioned phone booth, which is located in the store, kind of Superman used to go into. And from that location where those humidors and phone booth are going to be removed, he's going to put foodstuffs in order to get the sales ratio up to 50% in order to qualify for the grocery beer permit. Jay's administrative comments are the site for this application is located in the CA commercial zone, consisting primarily of commercial retail establishments. The subject parcel is small-scale mixed-use development that partially abuts a residential zone. The subject site has multiple commercial uses currently. The nearest location of the same class of permit is 1,250 feet away, and the distance to churches, schools, playgrounds, and residential districts will likely have no significant impact on the surrounding neighborhood quality of life. This office has no issues with the proposed grocery beer permit at the subject location. This is a very straightforward application. It has no negative impact on the neighborhood. In fact, it will add to the neighborhood convenience by providing for the sale of foodstuffs in the future, which heretofore could not have been obtained by the immediate neighbors to this store without having to go down 1,500 feet to that little store that I showed you. So I would ask for your approval. Thank you.
All right, at this point, I want to open it up for questions to the commissioners. Any questions? Anybody want? Mr. Fuller?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Attorney Knott, and thank you, Mr. Martin. I have a couple just very basic questions. First, what are the hours of operation now? And the follow-up is, would they change because of the permit?
Hi, Ray Martin, 39 Deerfield Drive, Easton, Connecticut. Currently, the hours are 5:30 a.m. to 9 p.m., and they'll remain the same.
Okay. And then my other question, this is more for you, Mr. Knott, than anyone else. In your experience, would you think that there are other beer and wine permits permitted? Hilltop Mudries, for example, right by Eli Whitney. I think you probably know where I'm going with the question. Are there other permits closer to any church or school or place of worship relative to this one?
I think in Lordship, they sell beer at that deli that's in Lordship Center, and I don't know how far that is from Lordship, the Lordship Church, or Our Lady of Peace. Oh, Ray is telling me that there's a place right across the street from Franklin School and near Holy Name Church. What's it called? Dolly's?
Dolly's Market, right at the Fort of Boston.
And are you familiar with Hilltop Mudries? It's on Huntington Road.
Yes.
Would you, just by eyeball, do you think that's closer than the proposed site here?
To St. Mark's or the Baptist Church?
Well, the relative to Franklin School.
Vis-a-vis Bunnell High School, you mean?
Well, I'm trying to. Eli Whitney's closer.
Oh, Eli Whitney is
Yeah,
right across
yeah,
the street
yeah.
from Eli Whitney.
That's exactly
Oh,
what I'm
yeah,
getting
yeah.
at.
No, it's right across the street from Eli Whitney.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's all the questions I have, Madam Chair.
A little slow tonight, Mr. Fuller, I am.
Any other questions? Anybody else? Mr. Paul?
Good evening. Thank you very much for your presentation. Just a quick question as it compares to there's a package store on the corner of Boston Avenue and Barnum Avenue where that cutoff is. There's like a fork in the road. There's
Yeah.
a store there that sells beer. I think that's closer to the church and
Oh,
the
absolutely.
school than this
That's
current
500
location.
feet from the church.
Yeah, okay, I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah.
No more questions.
Any other questions?
Oh, yeah, I forgot one, Madam Chair. This classification of permit, is it beer and, like beer and wine could be sold? Is it
just-
exclusively beer?
Grocery beer.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
Let me go around. Mr. Giuliano?
I'm okay, Madam Chair.
Ms. Peppin? Okay. Mr. Augustus?
I'll just ask one question. You said that to get the permit, they should have 50% of their sales from food, which they obviously don't now. What happens if, when they add the grocery items, that still doesn't make 50%?
The state won't give them the beer license.
Oh, so they have to establish
yeah,
that
yeah,
first. So
yeah.
this is coming down the road.
right.
Okay, thank you very much. No further question.
I have a couple of questions all around security. Will there be cameras on the beer coolers so that we can see if there's people below age? What kind of security do you have in place on it?
Hi, Ms. Phillips. I have about 20 digital cameras inside and outside the store that I have remote access to from my home, my office, and my phone. And my staff is very well trained. And in the last 30 years of my operation of the business, we haven't had one single tobacco violation or anything else. They know their job and they better do it.
What's your average storage on your DVR?
Excuse me?
What's your average storage retention time? 30 days, 20 days,
Oh, it depends. 20 is probably closer.
20, good. And they run constantly,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And the storage coolers, if I'm looking at this correctly, look like they're in a good line of sight, so the person who's sitting at the counter can see those.
Directly across. We have two checkouts, and they're both directly across.
That's what it appears to be. I just wanted to make sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. All right, at this point, I want to invite the public to come up and state your support, or opposition. I'll start with support. Is there anyone here who would like to come and speak in favor of this application? You could come forward now. Anybody would like to speak in favor? Okay. Anybody? This application, only on this application for the beer. That's all we're talking about. Anybody want to speak in opposition, opposed to the application, this application about adding a grocery beer permission? Seeing that there isn't any speakers to that effect, I'm going to ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the hearing?
I
By
second.
Mr. Paul, second by Ms. Peppin. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Yeah, both of them today.
A new dossier, thank you.
Thank you very much. While we're doing this, Mr. Giuliano, you want to read the next application?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. 290 Ferry Boulevard, petition of Majestic Motors LLC seeking approval of location for a general repairs license.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, Ms. Pippin, Madam Secretary, members of the Commission, and Jay. My name is Barry Knott. I'm a lawyer with the firm of Knott, & Dunn, with offices at 1656 Main Street, Stratford. I'm here this evening on behalf of Majestic Motors, LLC, doing business as Rhino Linings of Fairfield County, sole member of which is Peter Morley, who lives at 1051 Coleman Road, Cheshire, Connecticut. The manager of Rhino Linings of Fairfield County is with me this evening in the first row to my right. At this time, I'd like to submit the certificates of mailing and make reference to a folder of exhibits which I've handed each of you, to which I'll be making reference during the course of my presentation. The first 9 of which are photographs of this building on Ferry Boulevard. It's almost across the street from the Blue Sky Diner. It's called Blasius South. The address was 280 Ferry Boulevard. It is now 280 Ferry Boulevard and 290 Ferry Boulevard. We have obtained a second address for the business that is located in the rear of this building, and it is that area of the building, the rear of the building, about which this application relates. So Exhibit 1, 2, 3 are photos of the building from the front. Exhibit 4 is a photo of the area to the rear of the building where Rhino Linings of Fairfield County is located, and that is the subject of tonight's application. Exhibit 5 is another photo of the bay doors leading into 290 Ferry Boulevard. Exhibit 6 is a photo taken from the other side of the building into the same area to the rear. Exhibit 7 is a photo of the interior partition that separates 280 Ferry Boulevard from 290 Ferry Boulevard. Approximately, the front 2/3 of the building is occupied by Blasius South Auto Dealership. The rear 1/3 of the building is occupied by Rhino Linings of Fairfield, Connecticut. And as I will discuss in a minute, in December of 2016, you heard and approved an application from Blasius South for a used car dealership at this location. Because we have a second business in the building, we need a separate motor vehicle permit, in this case a general repairs license, for the business in the back of the building. Exhibit 8 is a truck that's undergoing the Rhino Lining process, installation process, and Exhibit 9 is another photo of the interior of the space. Now, Rhino Lining, by the way, if you take a pickup truck and you've got the bed in the back of the pickup truck, when you buy it from the dealer, it's steel. Rhino Lining is a rubber type of surface that is installed. It's like painted on or sprayed on, and it has a texture to it, and it's to protect the integrity of the steel bed from all kinds of bad things happening to it. Dents, acid, all this stuff. So many people who are in the trades install this rhino lining on their pickup trucks, and that's what this business is all about. So Exhibit 10 is the site plan for the property, and as I indicated, this just shows that the building's got 7,596 square feet. It's on a very large lot. The building is separated into two areas. I've highlighted in yellow the back third of the building where the rhino lining business is going. Exhibit 11 is a copy of the approval letter from you back in January to Blassia South for the used car dealer in the front of the building at 280. Exhibit 12 is a very rough rendering done by my client's wife showing the area that the rhino lining business will occupy, and she drew in the bay doors that I showed you in the photos and that type of stuff. And exhibit by the way, before we could submit this application, we actually had to obtain an address from the town engineering department. So I talked to them, I explained to them what the situation was, they analyzed the addresses on the street, and they were the ones that assigned the address 290 Ferry Boulevard to this business in the back of this building. So it's not some number that I just picked out of the hat. Now, Jay's comments. He says, currently on this property, there is another motor vehicle use with a general repairs license, Blassia South, that was approved by the Zoning Commission November of 2016. This use is relatively consistent with the mix of uses that currently preside in the general vicinity. With that being said, the character of Ferry Boulevard has begun to evolve, as you all know, with an influx of residential development applications. While the subject application will likely have little impact on the surrounding neighborhood, the Commission should be paying particular attention to how approvals along Ferry Boulevard will interact with the expected development along the corridor. Now, with respect to this comment by Jay, I want to point out to you that the approval of this application will in no way change the way this building is used now or in the future. It's been used the way we're proposing to use it. It's being used that way now, and it will continue to be used that way in the future. The only difference will be they will now have two businesses there, and it's my client's intention to get his employees involved in the ownership of the rhino lining business. And in order to do that, we had to set it up as a separate entity. However, nothing is going to change as far as on-site activity is concerned. Jay, in his comments, goes on to say, the site plan submitted for this application should have the correct address, 290 Ferry Boulevard, and the business name identified on the plan so as not to create any project when obtaining the state license. Exhibit 13 is a revised site plan in which the surveyor changed the name of the applicant to Majestic, my client, and added 290 Ferry Boulevard to the address as suggested by Jay. Jay finally says the Commission may also choose to inquire how the parking will be shared among the two motor vehicle repair shops. Additionally, the Commission should prescribe the standard motor vehicle conditions of approval. Well, first of all, let me say we have no problem with the standard conditions of approval. With respect to the parking, the lease between my client and Blasius contains a provision providing for the rhino lining business's use of the northeast corner of the lot for storage of containers and other personal property. The eastern half of the building, including the center lift bay and the area, is now occupied by rhino linings of Fairfield County and shared common spaces. In fact, the most number of parking spaces that rhino lining will ever use is between 5 and 7. Very low parking demand. The most number of vehicles they ever have on site, either being worked on or awaiting work, is 3. So they have, the most they ever have is 3 customer trucks. And there's 2 employees, one of whom is the owner. So you got the owner, 1 other guy, and 3 potential customers, so a total of 5, really, but say 7, okay? So the hours of operation, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., 5 days a week, and 7 a.m. to noon on Saturday. So that's it, really. It's a fairly straightforward application, and I would ask for your favorable approval.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to open it up to questions from the commissioners. Any questions? Mr. Fuller?
I always have a question on record. Just to clarify, so it's been used for automotive services in the past, currently automotive services now. And the reason why this petition is being sought tonight is a technicality because it's a separate business entity.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you, Attorney Knott. That pretty much clarifies
Yeah,
it for me.
that's it.
Mr. Giuliano?
Yeah, Attorney Knott, can you clarify one more time? You're going to change the front of the building to...
No, we're not touching the front of the building.
All right, so this,
We're not touching the
how
building.
you going to do 280, 290? You're
No,
going to
no,
change
that-
the name is what I was trying to get at.
The front of the building and the use of the two-thirds front of the building is going to remain exactly the same.
And it's going to say,
Blasius.
thank you.
That's the name of the car dealership.
All right.
And that has the address of 280 Ferry Boulevard. In the back, there'll be a little address sticker that'll say this store
290?
290.
For the-
And it'll have rhino linings of Fairfield County. But the building itself is not going to change at all.
Okay, I thought I heard you say in the front, that's why I was
No.
asking. No, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Peppin.
I just have one question. So this procedure that they do to line the trucks, that's considered, comes under general repairs? Is that how that goes? I mean,
According to the state, let's put it this way. It could be considered body work, I suppose. But as far as the state of Connecticut, as far as my client is concerned, he wants to be able to get a license from the motor vehicle department. He doesn't want to have a problem getting a license from the motor vehicle department.
so basically, that's all they're going to do, though, is the rhino?
Yeah,
Or the,
that's all.
oh,
That's it.
oh, so it must come under that same.
Yeah,
quick.
that's it.
Okay, no other questions.
Mr. Paul?
You mentioned lining, and whenever I hear lining, I get scared because of Raymark. Any contamination with this product that they're using to line these trucks?
No, it's no different than painting a car. As a matter of fact, if you look at that picture, you'll see that the rear portion of the truck that's in that photo is encased in a tent-like structure to keep and then they got the exhaust fans and all that other stuff. So there's no hazardous material used.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about any airborne things going on in there?
Yeah, no.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
Mr. Rogaskis? I'm good. Okay, I have just a couple of questions. You started to explain a little bit about general repair versus body work licenses, all right? Is there any thought that this applicant will in the future be doing any kind of body work or makeover work that would fall or overlap into that license?
There is no intention to do that at the present time. However, you can ask Jay this question. I don't know that he's going to be able to answer because I asked him the question once, and we were unable to find what is the difference between a general and limited repairer's license.
That was my next question.
Yeah, I don't know what the difference is, and I think didn't I ask you? And we don't know what the difference between a general and limited repairer's license is. Any business that operates where the employees work on vehicles needs either a general or limited repairer's license from the state motor vehicle department. And before they can get it, they've got to have approval from the local zoning authority.
Second question is, and it's sort of a pickup off to Mr. Paul. We're going to stipulate, as we always do, that we follow the general standard practices. And those practices usually include if there's materials, oil, waste, things that have to be removed. Is that going to be done separately from the other building that it's attached to, or is it going to be combined with the Blasius South?
Separately.
Separately?
Completely separate operation.
Completely separate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I didn't have any other questions. Does anybody else have any, just to go around again? No? Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. At this point, I'm going to ask if there's anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application to come forward. This is the time to speak up. Is there anybody who would like to speak in opposition of this application or just have a comment at all? Okay. We're really busy tonight. With that, I'm going to ask for a motion to table by Mr.
moved.
Fuller, second by Ms. Peppin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. I mean to close, yes, to close. Okay, that's 2 down. The third application, which is, I don't know if you all have it, it's continuation from the August 29th meeting, which is, do you all have it? Ms. Peppin, do you have it, or you want me to read it?
I think we have it here somewhere. Medical marijuana.
It's the medical marijuana.
August 29th. Yep. 1 or 2 are we doing?
It's number 2.
2. Text amendment, petition of Stratford Zoning Commission to add a new 15B regarding medical marijuana dispensaries and production facilities and a revised 3.30 regarding the moratorium on such facilities.
Thank you very much. This application was held open, the public hearing portion of it was held open an additional month to allow
Yeah.
better notification and opportunity for more people to speak. The applicant has already made their presentation, and the opportunity now is for the public to speak. So is there anybody who would like to come and speak in favor of the application? Is there anybody who would like to speak in opposition of the application or have any comment at all? Please, you're welcome.
Good evening. My name is Susan Rabinski, and I currently reside in Bridgeport. I lived in Stratford for close to 30 years, and I'm a graduate of SHS. Many in my family still live here in Stratford, including my mother and my brother. Both of my brothers began smoking marijuana as teenagers, and by the time they reached their mid-20s, they were supplementing with other substances. Both became addicts. My stepbrother, Ben Oberg, died in 2013 due to the effects of drug abuse on his body. He was 41 years old and left behind a 5-year-old son. My other brother, Patrick, is now a heroin addict. But it all started with marijuana. In the only longitudinal study of its kind, over 1,000 teenagers born in 1972 and 73 in New Zealand were followed through adulthood, with researchers checking in and retesting participants on marijuana use and its effect on the brain. Beginning at age 13, these teens were given full neurological assessments. The participants were then revisited at age 18, 21, 26, 32, and 38. Some of the highlights of this study are 17% of those who used marijuana in their teens were drug dependent at age 38. And there was an 8-point drop in IQ for participants who used marijuana in their teens. Other studies reported in the Journal of Neuroscience and at the National Institute of Health have proven that marijuana use has an adverse effect on parts of the brain associated with drug craving and dependence. In a nutshell, people who use marijuana in their teens and young adult years activate drug dependency in their brain. As legalization spreads across this country, marijuana businesses have the will and the money to spread misinformation about the effects of cannabis on the body. This is very similar to the ways the tobacco industry spread false information about cigarettes in the 1950s and 60s. When we, as citizens and a community, legitimize the marijuana industry by allowing it to infiltrate our neighborhoods, we are condoning the use of a substance which is not healthy and not safe. I urge you to continue the moratorium on dispensaries in Stratford and to save lives and to maintain the character of our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tammy Trojanowski, and I serve as the Local Youth Service Bureau Director, and I'm the Administrator of Community Services. and I reside at 15 Elizabeth Street. To be clear, I'm not here speaking in favor or opposition. I'm here to provide some information, and I have brought some packets of information that I would like to share with you.
Do you mind if we take one to put it into the record?
Absolutely, that would
Thank
be
you.
great. Thank you. So I also provide staff support to the Stratford Partnership for Youth and Families, a youth-adult coalition working to reduce youth substance abuse and promote developmental assets. We really want to draw your attention to 2 points tonight of information relative to marijuana and young people. First, marijuana use has generally increased among young people since 2007. This shift corresponds with both increased availability through limited legalization and diminishing perception of harm associated with marijuana. In Stratford, we survey a sample of students every 2 years. The most recent survey in 2006 documented that 15% of students in grades 7 through 12 used marijuana in the past 30 days, and among our high school students, it's 19% reported 30-day use. We also learned that perception of harm has been decreased. In 2011, 77%, or about 3/4 of the teens surveyed, reported that they were thinking that using marijuana was a risk to someone. In 2016, that dropped to 57%. A little over half of the kids reported thinking that there was harm associated by using marijuana. Secondly, the developing teenage brain is particularly vulnerable to the effects of marijuana, alcohol, and other drugs. The brain grows and develops into a person's early 20s. Prolonged drug use changes the brain in fundamental and long-lasting ways. Brain MRI studies now report that in young recreational marijuana users, structural abnormalities in gray matter density, volume, and shape occur in areas of the brain associated with drug craving and dependence. And as was earlier mentioned, there is a study documenting that participants who used marijuana heavily in their teens and continued through adulthood showed a significant drop in their IQ. The partnership strives to provide current information and useful resources to families, students, and the public. For example, on November 9th, we are hosting our annual freshman forum to prevent underage drinking and marijuana use for all 9th graders and their parents. We'd love to have you join us. We also distribute materials to parents to provide them with talking points for discussion with their children of all ages. We know that in Stratford, it is a hard conversation for parents to have. Sometimes they just don't know where to start, and we're hoping that we can help provide that information so they do have that conversation, because we know that kids who learn those risks from their parents are 50% less likely to try alcohol and marijuana. For additional information, please visit our website at stratfordpartnership.org, and I thank you very much for listening to our information.
Madam Chair, I have a question for
Thank
the
you very
witness.
much. Yes, please.
Thank you, Mrs. Trojanowski, and I also want to thank the speaker before you. Both, thank you for doing what you do to prevent bad behavior and bad habits forming with our youth. I hope this would be of some comfort to you, that this commission has done extensive research in addition to the Planning Commission. We're not looking at recreational use tonight. We're actually, in the regulation proposed, prohibiting and reinforcing state and federal codes to prohibit recreational use. This is specifically for the medical conditions and medical prescriptions approved by the state of Connecticut that has to go through the Department of Consumer Protection review, in addition to a lot of the regulations we're proposing tonight, which is special case, which means you have to meet the neighborhood. You can't be out of sync with the neighborhood. There's one idea, I think, that both you and the speaker before you bring up that might be something for us to chew on as well, is maybe to put an age restriction on maybe those who would seek medical use, to have it 18 or 21 or whatever we feel the appropriate number is, to also prevent any sort of teenager to obtain that. I don't know if the State Department of Consumer Protection has an age restriction yet on who's able to get a prescription. We're not just open up a store and getting that stuff out there. It's very much regulated by the Department of Consumer Protection, too. They have to have a certifiable prescription from a medical professional in order to get it in the first place. And it's generally not a smoked product. It's usually an edible or a topical cream or a vapor. So if there's some information that the public would want to share, it's that. And I'd be more than happy to come to the forum with you to also explain some of that too. So I don't want people to fear that there's recreational marijuana coming in the town. If I was, my term ends in December. If the state all of a sudden legalized overnight recreational use, I would be in support of zoning regulations to prohibit recreational use in town, at least to establish businesses that would profit off of that. But I find medical very different than recreational. But I just want to get that out there so there's no misconception of what the zoning commission is trying to achieve tonight. That's not recreational, it's not trying to target the youth, and if there's additional protections you think we should institute in our policy, I think it would be a big help to this board as well.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to add just one other thought. The reason we're also considering medical marijuana is that there are also other studies that correspond that have demonstrated that medical marijuana use has had a significant reduction in illegal opioid use. Medical marijuana is used for pain relief, and the people who are prescribed by their doctors to get pain relief, the use of medical marijuana has avoided their need to go out and acquire the prescription opioids that had led to a lot of other problems that we have identified. So I understand, and I'm in agreement with you, that we need to be vigilant, and I'm very proud of what the Stratford Partnership in Youth and Families has done to educate our youth about the ills and problems of recreational drugs. But we as a society, and hopefully as Stratford, can also look at that we have more than one problem, and this may help us in other areas that we are trying to address as well. So,
Would you be able to forward me that study? Because I've not seen the study that has demonstrated that.
I'd be
So
delighted to. I read it, well, I wouldn't say I can qualify, but I read a lot, and I read it in the various periodicals on the web. So I'll look them up and I'll send them to you.
Or just send the link would be great.
I'll send you the link.
Would love to have that information, thank you.
Is there any other questions for Mr. Ojanowski?
Yeah, just one follow-up. Mr. Trojanowski, I don't know if you had a chance to read the regulation yet, but I definitely would like a peer review on it, where you think we could help shield the youth from certain elements of the medical use, or if you think there's something. This is why we continued the hearing in many regards. Before we implement the full policy, was there anything we missed? So I definitely would have, if you want to take a look at, I imagine, well, we have a copy on the file, so.
All right, well, thank you for that opportunity.
Mr. Paul?
Yes, I'd like to thank you very much for sharing the information with us this evening. And believe me, we're going to take a very hard look and make sure that we get public input, and we're watching all the issues and all the risks associated with medical marijuana. But again, it's nothing that's going to deal with any recreational aspect of it, and we're going to make sure of that.
Okay.
Mr. Giuliano?
Sure, I just would like to thank you for what you do and the speaker before you. I just happen to keep everything since this was going on. It started, I'm sure you're aware, at 2013 we started to do this, and there's been these hearings, there's been, June we had the people that open up the places to do it, to explain that, you know, you can get it, but you're not getting a high. It has other things. I don't have to tell you because you know more than I do. And it's just for medical. And I just want to keep that in mind, that it's just for medical. It's not for, recreational. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to add or have anything to say? You're welcome to come forward. We're very easy to talk to. Okay, at that note, I'd like to ask for a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a motion to close the public
For
hearing?
that, I did invite Mrs. Trojanowski to peer review the zoning regulations, so I don't know if it would be prudent to technically close the hearing Because there might be testimony or might be information that would come back to us.
Okay, she didn't indicate that at the time, but if, I'm going to just ask if you don't mind. Ms. Trojanowski, are you still here? Sorry to let you go so quickly. Mr. Fuller indicated that he asked you to do a peer review and take a look at it. Is it your intent to come back to the zoning commission with a report or a finding?
If requested, absolutely.
Mr.
If that's what you would like done, I would do that.
It couldn't hurt. There might be something we missed in the regulation that could help strengthen the regulation.
Okay. I think you have the agreement of the commission, and they're asking for your peer review of the regulation to give us your comments and feedback as to things you might either agree or would like to see adjusted.
So again, to be clear, I would be just providing information. Be strictly information for you to make your decision.
Yeah, definitely with the information you would have access to, whether it's in the medical field, health field, or youth protection in the school community. I think that would be, this way, before we implement a policy and then have to come back and revise it, or a problem we didn't foresee, this way we could kind of, the best policies are the ones where are thoroughly researched from the start and are well-defined. And I think we've come a long way, and we have almost something ready to go, but I think it could never hurt to leave no stone
I'm in agreement.
unturned.
I think it's prudent to do our due diligence. We're not under a time restraint, and we respect your opinion very much, as you have heard. So with that, I am going to motion to table.
Before I do that, another thing that we should, and we could continue this discussion in admin session, but I want to plant the seed in our heads, not just to the commission, but to members of the public or any experts out there. We did a lot looking at dispensaries, but we haven't really fully flushed out the whole production side yet, too. So I think there's still an opportunity.
I think that would be a whole separate approach that we might take. But yes, I think we'll begin with the administrative discussion before we bring that forward. So is there a motion
Then
to
I'll
table?
move forward with the tabling or continuance.
Table for, by Mr. Fuller,
Second.
second by Mr. Paul. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, we only have one application that is left, and I'm going to ask Ms. Pepin to take the chairmanship, as I am noted to the secretary that I am recusing myself from further involvement in this next application.
Before we do, Madam Chair, is this the last public hearing docket for tonight? Because I know the TOD is postponed, or...
This is the last public hearing, and then we follow it with administrative session.
Okay, so then we could motion to adjourn the public hearing once discussion's had on...
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Excellent, thanks. That'd be this one here.
I'm going to get another coffee.
Good evening. Mr. Paul, could you read the petition of 211 Ferry Boulevard?
Oh, 211 Ferry Boulevard. Is it 211 or is it,
No, it's
500
text
North.
amendment
yeah,
of North Ave.
Oh, 500, I'm sorry.
that's okay. You had me going for a minute there.
500 North Avenue.
Thank you. Text amendment. Petition for 500 North Avenue LLC seeking to amend the fee schedule to exempt 8-30G affordable housing projects from fees from submitting applications.
Commissioner.
Oh, yeah, a point of order, Madam Vice Chair. Since Madam Chair Phillips has recused herself and we have an opportunity to seat Mr. Raguskis as a voting member on this item, I think it would be good to have it fully announced that Mr. Raguskis is, in this regard, a full-fledged zoning commissioner.
Mr. Ragusis, you will be on commission for this 500 North Avenue. The petitioner?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. For the record, I'm Attorney Stephen Bellis, and I represent the petitioner of this application. I'm not going to be very long, but I just wanted to explain why I'm bringing the petition. As you well know, there's been a few affordable housing applications submitted to the town, and there's been a little bit of confusion or disagreement as to what the fees should be when applying. And that's no reflection on Jay. It's just simply a disagreement that he and I may have based on your regulations. So with that being said, I just wanted some clarification, and I think the best way to do that is to make your regulations be more clear. So let's just start with some pretty simple things. In your zoning regulations, it says that I can file a petition under 19.1, and under 22.4, it says that all fees shall be an amount prescribed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So your commission is the one who decides the fees for these different applications. I have there's a table that's given to us, and we call it an adopted fee schedule. And the one that I'm reading off of is May 9th, 2017, and I think that's the latest one, right, Jay?
Sorry, say one more time.
May 9th, 2017, that's the latest. Okay. So if you look on the fee schedule, there's nothing on the fee schedule that talks about what the fees would be if one were to file an affordable housing application. You do have a zone change and a fee for that. No issue with that. If we're requesting a zone change, we pay the zone change. Same thing with zone amendment. You know, there's no question on that. The trouble arises when we come in with an application, and let's make up an example. Let's make believe, and this is totally, there's no pending application on this. Make believe there was 100 units being requested. What Stratford has done in the past is said, okay, under number 3, special case, you have to give us, to tell us the size of the building, and then that would be a fee. Usually it's $960. And then if it's multifamily, it's $150 per unit plus $60. That's what your regs say. But, and this is where the problem is, I'm filing an application for an affordable housing. I'm not filing for a special case. So there's a big difference. A special case you don't have in your zoning regulations or on your in your fee schedule anything that talks about site plans. So let me read where the problem arises. As you all know, an affordable housing application is, it comes right from a state statute, and it's 8-30G. And under 8-30G, an applicant only has to do certain things to file an application. And the first one is to file what they call, and I'm quoting, draft zoning regulations. So we draft some zoning regulations, we present it to your commission, and you either vote on it, yes or no. This is the important one. It says, any commission by regulation may require that an affordable housing application seeking a change of zone shall include the submission of a conceptual site plan describing the proposed development's total number of residential units and their arrangement on the property and the proposed development's roads and traffic circulation, sewage disposal, and water supply. That's all that an applicant has to do. And again, it says the key words here is a conceptual site plan, okay? So what that means is, in my opinion, what that means is it's not a special exception. We're not applying for a special exception where your fee schedule would tell us what the fees are. So there's nothing in your fees, in your regulations, or in the fee schedule that tells us what we would have to pay. So I'm saying we need some clarification. And I'm not telling you what it is. That's really up to you people. But I know for certain it's not a special exception. A special exception is clearly defined in your regulations. I know, each town calls it something else. Here, I think yours are under section 22. I think, let me double check. A special exception, it means that it meets the regulations. However, you can consider health, safety, and welfare in your decision. That's what a special, I'm summarizing, that's what a special exception regulation's all about. On a site plan, which you don't have, if the site plan meets all the zoning regulations, you have no discretion and you have to approve it. But those are different animals for different kind of projects. There's site plan applications, there's special exceptions, and you've dealt with that over the years. But I just wanted to point out that 8-30G says initial concept plans. That's not a special exception. It's not a final site development plan. So what we're really giving you is an initial idea, obviously drawn by an engineer, saying, okay, there's going to be, in my example, 100 units, and this is how we're going to lay it out, and there's going to be a parking lot over here, and blah, 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 blah. So there's nothing in your regulations that tells me that I have to pay X amount of dollars for that. And that's where we're having a disagreement. So I am requesting this commission say, okay, just like you did for everything else, for a zone change, it's $775. For a zone amendment, you have a fee, $775. There should be a line item added. If one were to file an affordable housing application, the fee ought to be X dollars, whatever, $775, whatever it may be. And you don't have that. So I just want to make one last point. After an 8-30G plan is approved by a commission, we would come back with a final site development plan at that time. And suppose we asked for 100, but the commission only approved, we'll make believe, 50. If you had something that told us, okay, on final site development plans, it's X amount of dollars, I could even understand that, because now you have an approved application and we're going to give this commission final site development plans. And you would need to review them, and, I understand there'll be a fee for that, but you don't have that either. So I don't think that the statute intended, the statute 8-30G does not intend for an applicant to have to pay the special exception fee of $160, or $150, I apologize, per unit when just making an application. Because it's only an initial concept plan. And so I'm clear, I know council's here, I'm referring to 8-30G section, these statutes, how they write these things. 8, I guess it's little c. That's where it says, shall include the submission of a conceptual site plan. So all I'm asking is the commission to consider maybe perhaps putting an affordable application line on your fee schedule. You decide what the amount is. I'm not telling you what to put in. And then if you wanted to put final site development plan review, I have no problem with a fee there either, but it should be stated. I don't think I think it's been improper using the special case waiver of use fee. It doesn't fit. So I'm hoping you would agree with me, and I'll answer any questions. I'll give this to council. May I approach?
Yes. I think maybe Attorney Flora can help us kind of the legal aspect of where we are and.
Well, I agree with Attorney Bellis to a point. The statute 8-30G, as written, does allow for a zoning commission to require a conceptual conceptual site plan with respect to these 8-30G applications. It doesn't define what a conceptual plan of that nature is. It does state that the conceptual plan will show certain things, the units, number of units, the traffic circulation, sewage, et cetera, et cetera. What Stratford has done is, and here's where I differ with Attorney Bellis, what Stratford has done has basically said that any 8-30G application will be considered as a special case. Well, what's a special case? A special case is a permitted use in any district subject to meeting the criteria listed in that special case. So the zoning commission has to consider it. And a lot of the criteria in the special case section of the zoning applications, or the zoning regulations, talks about traffic patterns, talks about configuration of buildings, talks about density. In other words, addresses the factors that are set forth in the statute. So I don't know that Stratford is prohibited from hearing and mandating special case applications or 830G applications as a special case. I don't necessarily agree with that. However, that really doesn't have anything to do with the fee issue, which Attorney Bellis is speaking about tonight. Again, this commission has the authority to set fees for 8-30G applications. Those fees should be reasonable based on the work that has to go into it, the considerations that have to be studied, and the complexity of the issue. I don't see anything wrong with this commission doing that and setting forth a specific 8-30G application fee. But I similarly don't see anything wrong with the notion that if the commission felt that the special case application fees were applicable to the 8-30G situation, that the commission couldn't decide to keep those fees in place. So as a policy matter, you do have the authority to study it and to revise the fee schedule and to formulate a specific fee for 8-30G applications.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess in response, John and I agree on like 90% of what the statute says. I just wanted to add that, again, a fee is, an application fee is something that generally towns need to cover some of their initial costs, you know. But if you put, and in a special exception, you know, you might have a multi-family, two-family house or something like that, then $300 is not exorbitant, obviously. But if you have these units where there's like 100 units or so, then the fee starts, you know, just doing the math, it becomes significant. And that's not the purpose of what a fee is supposed to be paid to for the town. You know, it's to cover advertising. We understand all that, you know. So the only other point I'd like to make is that, you know, again, it's an affordable housing application. The whole purpose of the thing is to make it affordable. So I think that I don't want the fee to be punitive, so much so that it prevents people from filing an application. I don't think that this town has, I'm not saying the town has done it that way in the past, but if you make it too expensive, then I think you're really defeating, then you're making it a penalty on the applicant. No one wants that. So, you know, I'm not telling you what the fee ought to be. That's not for me to say. But I know it can't be $150 per unit, because then you could run into the problem that it becomes a penalty and discourages applications. So I really leave it up to you. I would like clarification so we don't keep filing applications, and then they're not accepted because the fee is not paid, and I disagree with what the fee ought to be, and there's no need for that. It's just litigation that none of us want or need, and I'm not, right, John? We end up in court fighting over a fee. It costs more to pay us than it is the application fee. I'm not here to do that. So, what, you know what I'm saying, sir? Yeah, you know. So I'm here with an olive branch to you saying, please fix this for all of us, and so we don't have to fight about things that we don't need to fight about, and we can fight about the substantive things that we need to fight about. Is that fair enough? Okay.
Are there any questions from the commission? Commissioner Fuller?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. When you're do public office for a long time, you hear just about everything, and I've heard just about everything tonight and seen just about everything. I do agree with the idea of having a separate definition of an affordable housing fee versus a special case fee, because you're not applying for special case, you're applying for affordable housing. I concur with that. I think if you apply for affordable housing, it should be under the affordable housing fee schedule and regulations, and both state and local regulations. And if you're applying under Section 20, which is our special case, you should be under that auspices. Special case does not apply to an 830G. It supersedes it. I understand the argument, and I do appreciate you bringing at least the concept forward to this commission and to this town to help kind of streamline and modernize some of the regulations. But I have to disagree with your definition of what an exorbitant or a punishing or penalizing fee is. The more dense, whether it's 830G, Section 20, or another sort of density, the more cost it is to the town to review it. That the town takes on more of a cost from the engineering, from fire department, from education, from public safety. Name the department, there's a lot more, not just review, but also once built out fully, there's also more of a public resources are used. So I'm not saying the town should profit off it, but the town should at least be made even off it. So there should be some sort of metric in how we measure size, density, and scope of a project. It shouldn't be one size fits all. It should be an adjustable scale to that, and that's something this commission is going to have to work on. But the bigger the project is, the more it should cost. Absolutely, that's unfair to the taxpayers. And it's absurd to me that you would consider that penalizing. Your client's the one who's making the money. And using, if it's going 830G, it's already telling us it doesn't want to deal with local zoning codes. It wants to deal with state zoning codes. That's what it chose to go with. So how would you propose what would you think a fair metric would be? Because it has to be, you have to look at size, scope, and depth of a project.
Yeah, to answer your question, I think maybe I didn't elucidate it clearly enough. I think the solution would be you have a small application fee for the initial concept. A lot of time, and so that would not be an exorbitant fee. And then if it is approved and you need a final site development plan, that's when all those expenses, I think, come in. Because under an 8-30G, if it is approved, a final site plan has to be submitted to the town for whatever was approved. So in my example, I think what I tried to say is maybe you applied for 100, the commission approved 50, the applicant accepts 50, now he files a final site development plan for 50, then the engineer has to look at it. All the people that you spoke of, Mr. Fuller, have to look at it. So there, I think you can build in maybe per unit, you know what I'm saying, 50 per unit cost. But initially, it may go nowhere. You know, the initial concept plan may get denied. It's only an initial concept plan, so it doesn't need a lot of review. It's only an initial concept plan. I think the more extensive review that you're referring to takes place when you have to approve the final site development plan. But I think that's the solution.
But there lies a tricky crux for any zoning board or even a BZA, if you have to go to a BZA, is, well, how could a zoning commission then deny a final site plan approval if it gave the conceptual approval and there's just a few things off or something's taken advantage of, in addition to the 830G, which disadvantages local P&Zs? you also now have the conceptual approval that would also make it very difficult for a zoning commission. Almost if you have something completely out left field and, but how often does that really happen? There are changes on the ground too. Once you start really trying to put an architectural design together, you'll find that the logistics may not be there too. And, or there's harder rock or there's softer soil. It's, when you're dealing with anything natural sciences, water and rock, it changes the dynamic.
Generally speaking, to answer your question, that's handled with the building department. When you go in for your building permit, you have to give much more detailed drawings to satisfy your engineer that, like you just said, it's structurally fine, So those kind of details go in more into the building permit process as opposed to zoning. Zoning is and listen, I didn't write the statute, you know that. I was reading from it. It says initial concept plan, So what I think that what the legislature is trying to portray is, you can't come in there and say, I want an 8-30G and not show you guys anything. I mean, that's not fair. So that's why they say you have to have an initial concept plan that shows how many units, where they're going to be located. But it's not what we've been doing, actually, you and I, over the past few years with these detailed development drawings that we've been coming in with. That's really not what the statute says. So I don't think that the review should be at the initial. I don't think there's a big cost initially. I think the cost comes if it does get approved and we file the final site development plans or we file a building permit. That's my suggestion.
But you raise another interesting point. With those detailed plans, there isn't like a building department public hearing. There isn't a building department commission per se. There's a zoning commission that's elected, or P&Z in most towns where planning and zoning is unified.
Zoning here, I get it.
That's where the public hearing happens. That's where the public is able to chime in, or other experts are able to chime in. So there's also a transparency factor on that too, because this commission during my time has approved some 830Gs.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And it's also denied some 830Gs.
I agree with
It
that
hasn't
statement.
really said they're all great, they're all bad. It has taken a case-by-case approach on them, which is what it should be doing.
I agree with you.
But that's why you want more details in the plan too. That gives the public and the commission. It's kind of like a first line of defense, unless if you have to go to inland and wetlands or some other early commission based on whatever that site might mandate. So how would you address that? So what we could approve a conceptual plan. And I don't necessarily disagree or want to throw any cold water on the concept of maybe there's an initial review first and then a final site plan review to proceed. And it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the real crux is in that initial review and what you would potentially be paying on the initial review side.
I'll have to disagree with you because I think if we come in with a project that's 100 units and then we accept, after they do a modification and maybe it's only 50, that plan's going to look a lot different, right? So I think that and again, it's like a site plan review, although you don't have site plan reviews, but maybe you do it under your special exception. It's a little different in this town.
We have had final site plan reviews a lot. It's something that was much more common a couple years ago.
Yeah. So that's when you would get into the nitty-gritty about, the slope of the driveway, or you need the dumpster over here, those kinds of issues.
Just for recollection, I believe 3044 Main Street had a final site plan component to it.
Can you say that again, please?
The affordable housing on 3044 Main Street did come back to the commission for some sort of final approval.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
So it's not uncommon for this point. I'm not against the concept of having, an application fee versus a site plan fee, or looking at the metrics on how, because you really want something that's fair. You want something that doesn't overly burden a petitioner, whether it's 830G or non-830G. But you also want something that doesn't punish the town or is cost prohibitive for the town, so they're taking on more and more applications and the town's losing money, and that's unfair to taxpayers. But also you want another component of full transparency, so the members of the public are also able to chime in. So that's really the balance that has to be made here.
Okay. Well, you're going to have to debate this among yourselves, and I can't answer. There's no crystal ball, but you understand where I'm coming from. I think I've made myself clear. Unless you have
Any other questions, Commissioner Giuliano?
Good for now, Madam Vice
Commissioner Paul?
Yes, thank you very much. I take it you've done a lot of these with other towns and cities as well in the state
other
of Connecticut?
towns, you know how Connecticut is. We're all local, and each town does things different.
Silos, I know, I hate them.
Yeah, we're not a county kind of government, so what someone else does in another town is different from the next town, and same with the zoning regulations. They're all a little bit different.
Yeah.
So I can't say for sure. If you're asking me what it is that other towns do, I know for certain, and they don't use the special exception.
Yeah, and I
fee
guess
schedule.
the structures are going to be different too from town to town as well, so you're not comparing apples to
Perhaps,
apples.
Jay may have a better handle on what other towns do on that, or could get that information if
Yeah.
you need it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that maybe we should take a look at it.
Okay.
What I look at also is like the conceptual plan you send, and it almost sounds like it's only going to get a courtesy kind of review, which I can understand. If that's all we're going to give it is a courtesy review, then the fee shouldn't be as exorbitant. However, if Jay's saying that he's got to go through more than a courtesy review for some reason, then it's a different type of expense associated. So therein lies why our fee might be a little bit higher than it should be based on a conceptual versus a detail.
Yeah.
If we did a detail, let's say, for example, we did a detail after we charged you the initial fee we currently have on the books, and then you went from 50 units down to 20 units, would our system reimburse you for the difference in number of units?
No, we don't get reimbursed.
Okay. Well, that's good information, and those are the kind of things I guess I see why you're seeing some discrepancies and some disconnects. But I'm not opposed to talking about it offline with Jay and getting together with the fellow commissioners to talk about this. Thank you very much for sharing your information.
welcome, sir.
You're not done yet. There's probably a couple more questions.
Commissioner Orcas?
I'd just like to say, I mean, the cursory review doesn't sound like it would lead to much of an approval. In the example you keep giving of a 100-unit proposal, and we say, well, you can only have 50 units, we need a lot of information before we can make that, and we usually get information provided to us from different town departments and services, which means they've got to put in a fair amount of time immediately. If they're just looking at it cursory and not spending any time on it, then whatever approval we gave would be cursory.
Well, I know, and listen, I'm a lawyer, so I listen to words very carefully, and I'm not picking on you. But the statute doesn't say cursory review, okay? It says, shall include the submission of a conceptual site plan.
I'm sorry.
And I'm not picking on you.
Right.
So a conceptual site plan, I agree with you, is just, it has less information than a detailed development plan that would have, obviously has more details.
Right.
But I didn't write this. I'm reading it right out of the Connecticut state statutes. And, all I can do is advise my client what the statute says, and then, this is what you have to do. If the town chooses to do more, I can't help that. But I don't, it just says, and that's why I was pointing it out, it says all we have to submit is a conceptual site plan, and it tells you what has to be on it, describing the proposed development, total number of units, where they're going. Not a lot of, nothing like, the slope of the driveway, where the dumpster's going, whether there's a generator, all the things that we seem to get wrapped up in.
But I would think our town departments would have to take a look at those conceptual plans and come up with some of, well, the driveway can't be sloped more than this before it can be approved, It's...
Well, no, there's no question. There's some review. I get it.
And obviously a bigger development is going to take more time and more resources and thus cost more money. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't look at this, but I'm saying that the initial fee shouldn't just be...
$10.
Right.
I'm with you. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a few comments. And I think sometimes up front, if you have a small fee, like Mr. Augustus said and the other commissioners, that the detail in which all of our departments have to go through just to, if it's 50, if it's 100. And I think, that it would be hard for us. We probably would get a ton of, applicants on just small fees and just, coming through. And I just think that that's, the way it's structured is so that everyone can actually look at the project in detail. And I think that's the...
I guess, listen, I'm not disagreeing with you. Listen, towns have employees that they have to pay them a salary, whether they're getting no applications or whether they get 100 applications, right? I know that these fees are to help offset some of that, but I don't think it's the responsibility of an applicant to, help pay, you know what I'm saying? It's to offset some of the costs, as Mr. Fuller said, but, there's employees at a town, and their job is to review applications, and I agree with this gentleman. Yeah, if it's more complex, it's going to take them more time. I get that. I do get it. But you can't push that. I'm saying you can't push that off on the applicant. That's all I'm saying.
I respectfully disagree.
Okay.
You're the one seeking, well, theoretically, you're the one seeking to build and make profit in that town. And the bigger the project, the more burden it is on municipal resources, presumably. So I think there is some onus on you.
Well, I would say, taking the other coin, private property, we pay taxes on that private property and how we develop it. Sometimes it's profitable and sometimes it's not.
I understand.
But I don't think profit has anything to do with this equation, really, because that's not what we're really talking about. It's talking about...
It's a voluntary act. You're volunteering applying,
Yes.
whether it's 830G or Section 20.
But it's your property.
Yeah,
And you pay taxes on that property.
yeah, but you don't have to develop it a certain way
Well-
either. I mean, that it comes down to a matter of choice, and then your client's actions then triggers an expense to the town. Is that fair for everybody else in the town? It's a bigger philosophical governing.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that
question,
debate. I don't want to get in that debate. I think you understand where I'm coming from.
Well, I don't disagree with taking a look at the different fee arrangements to
Okay.
define what an affordable housing fee should be.
That's all I'm asking. Yeah, that's all I'm asking. All right. I appreciate everyone
No more
hearing me.
questions from the commissioners? Okay, then we'll have the public.
Is this a public hearing? Oh, okay, no problem. I'm done.
They can speak, right? Yeah. Okay. Just so that you know, we are keeping this open for the Planning Commission's recommendations. Okay.
Yep.
So is there anyone in favor of this tax amendment that would like to speak? Is there anyone opposed to this tax amendment that would like to speak? Just state your name and your address, please.
My name is Merrill Pruitt. My address is 575 Peters Lane here in Stratford. I'm addressing the Honorable Zoning Commission, the Town of Stratford Planning and Zoning Administrator, Mr. Jay Hibansky. And I'm speaking on behalf of the Concerned Citizens Group of Stratford Incorporated. We believe the fees the town has set for any property owner seeking to submit applications for building projects using the 8-30G Affordable Housing Law are appropriate and necessary so that the town employees might work proactively to study and evaluate such applications. Since the fees for applications are entered into the town's budget and used to pay our town employees that have the best interest of the town in mind, these town employees must be compensated in order to spend time studying applications with regard to public safety and environmental concerns. We think the fees set for submitting applications to build affordable housing projects are reasonable with regard to the number of incomplete and inappropriate applications submitted over the last 3 years for the purpose of changing zoning in a residential community. Further, the ongoing appeals that have followed the decisions of the Zoning Commission have been obvious attempts to diminish the town's resources. The town must remain in control to set these fees in order to avoid the risk of developers submitting numerous applications that are counter to how a community might want to grow and change. Stratford must keep control of its destiny and govern development that is in character with its surroundings and that do not pose a threat to people regarding pollution and the safety of the general public. It is in the best interest of our town and the people who live here to continue to set fees for all applications submitted by property owners that exhibit little thought about the disruption they cause to communities or the added expenses they bring to the town while they set their sights on personal gain. If we allow this type of special treatment to be given by eliminating application fees, then we better be prepared to all run for cover. I will submit these to all of you. We'll have a copy. Thank you for hearing me, our group. Any questions? No? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bob Grasso. I live at 211A Agawam Drive. I don't have any prepared notes. I came down tonight as a concerned resident also. And just listening, I am not an attorney, but I just think the attorney here was parsing words in my view. Parsing words between what's a concept versus a detailed plan. I don't understand what the spirit and the intent is to come to this commission and recommend what they want to do, go forward with. In order to do that, in order for you to do your job, you're going to need some detail. So I don't know even what a concept approval means. Does that mean you get a nice rendering and you can hang it on the wall? I really don't know what that means. So I think in order to even go forward without, taking any more time, your precious time, reviewing this information, you need more detail. So I do agree. Maybe there is a problem with the fees. Maybe they're too low. Maybe you need to increase those fees, because if you have something of that magnitude, like you described earlier this evening, which was very good, I thought, in terms of the number of units that are going in, I think that's a point well taken, and a lot of analysis has to go in. You need data points to review information, to make logical, mindful decisions in the interest of the community. Conceptual approvals, I'm not familiar enough, and maybe I'm being ignorant here, but I don't even know what it means. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening, members of the Commission, Madam Chair. My name is Joe Kubik, and I live at 1350 James Farm Road. I'm a lawyer with Harlow, Adams, and Friedman in Milford, Connecticut. I am a lawyer for Concerned Citizens Group of Stratford and various neighbors along James Farm Road. And I know you know the saga of 500 North Avenue and the affordable housing plans for James Farm Road. And we're not here to talk about that, but that's what a lot of the neighbors are concerned about. And I'd like to start up by saying I've read Mr. Urbanski's comments. I've read the MetroCog comments. I agree with Mr. Urbanski. I don't always do that. But as to MetroCog, it states very clearly, it was a very clear analysis in your files, that you at the Commission have the statutory authority to set fees, and you, the Commission, have a statutory authority to require additional application information. And you've done that in our regs. Our regs contain all that. And our regs are developed over time. Lots of thought went into these regs over lots and lots of years. The history of these regs and the development of these regs goes back 75 years or more. There's also a policy for the fees, and that was set by history of this commission meeting and setting fees and determining what was a fair and appropriate fee schedule. There's basically, in my opinion, 3 reasons why you want to set fees for these types of projects. One is you want to prevent frivolous applications. And the best example for frivolous applications is what was recently withdrawn from your consideration. That was 795 James Farm Road. The applicant had come in, petitioner here and the applicant there, in that matter had come in with 72 units, and then it was reduced to 60 units last year. Then that was denied. Now they're coming in under 8-30G with 116 units for the property. Now, you probably all have these plans in your house, but I'm going to submit front and rear elevations and side elevations for the record. You know, why 116 units? Why not 500 units? And where's it going to stop? The fees per unit prevent this frivolous application process that I know that 500 North Avenue wants to take advantage of if they're allowed to do it. You guys hit the nail on the head. Commissioner Fuller, you know, the number of units, increase in the number of units is going to increase the cost that the town is going to experience. Mr. Urbanski mentioned it over and over again in his comments. Second reason why you want to set fees higher for higher density projects is, of course, to offset the costs that are going to be incurred by the town through its hired professionals and through its subcontractors and the almost eventual litigation in a lot of these matters. Lawyers cost a lot of money, too. Third, another reason is to encourage the developer to actually build out an approved project. Once they have some skin in the game, aren't they going to see it through to make the project happen? Or is it simply a tactic to scare neighbors into something else that might not otherwise be permissible by regulation or statute? That said, it's not fair for a developer to waste everyone's time on 116 units on 4 acres. Your time, our time. That's what the fees are there for, to prevent the frivolousness. You know that I'm sure you know, and I'm sure Attorney Floric will tell you that. Oh, by the way, I agree with your opinion, John, for a change, too. It's not John will explain to you that you guys are sitting in a legislative capacity on this zone reg change. If you deny this petition, the burden for the applicant to appeal and to be successful is extremely great and not likely to be successful unless he can show some type of an undue action by this commission. In his petition, Attorney Bellis, in my opinion, is doesn't want any fees, but then he's saying that special case doesn't apply. So he's got this there shouldn't be the fees for affordable housing, and special case doesn't apply, and he's mixing them together. I think there's 2 separate issues. One, you clearly have the right to set fees. And 2, as to special case, we believe that by statute, site plans can be required by regulation. We believe that our regulations require affordable housing plans to come in as a special case that we've addressed and provided for what statutes allow us to do. In fact, do not prohibit us from doing. So we believe our statutes provide adequate protections. The protections I've heard voiced, the concerns I've heard voiced here, the protections for those concerns, such as whether the plans are adequate or not, or whether we've gone through this whole process for nothing because we reach another level and there can't be an agreement on the plans. Mr. Attorney Bellis states that he thinks it's improper. He thinks troubles arise. You know, he represents 500 North Avenue LLC that wants to put 116 units on 4 acres of land on a steep slope. You know, he says the whole purpose is to make it affordable for 8-30G. Now, I could see if 500 North Avenue LLC was a bona fide charitable organization. You know, they're there to save the impoverished and to do its best to put people in houses, take people off the streets. But 500 North Avenue is anything but a bona fide charitable organization. In fact, it's the exact opposite of the spectrum. It's there for only one reason, to make money. And they want to make money at the cost of the town of Stratford. And that's one of the purposes for having the fees eliminated or changed. You know, when developers come to projects, they take into account the fees and what the filing fees and zoning fees are going to be. They know they put that into their budget, so when they come to buy a piece of property, that's all factored into the price they're going to pay. North Avenue LLC is going to keep whacking away at these properties, and if you take away the fee structure that's currently there, they're going to have every incentive to go in for many more units on different properties. This is to prevent the abuse of the process, and that's why it's there, along with the other reasons I've also stated. Mr. Bellis claims that the special case regs are not required by 8-30G, that you could file simple conceptual plans. However, 8-30G provides that we can ask for more information. In fact, what's it called? The Connecticut Municipality Governments, MetroCog, actually sets that forth very well in their letter. Applying special case regs to 8-30G regulations is not prohibited by statute. The Commission by statute may set fees, and the fees set by the Commission are based on sound reasons and history of this town and developed over time. What you have here is a developer who wants to change the regs to make as much money as possible. Therefore, I request on behalf of my clients and my neighbors and my family, please deny the petition. Thank you.
Is there,
Behind me is about, I think I counted 30 people. I think is anybody here not in opposition to the petition except for Mr. Bellis? All right, there's 30 people here in opposition to this petition.
is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Mary Brunner. I live at 655 James Farm Road, and I guess I'm a little late in speaking.
I'm sorry, did you sign up here?
No, I did not sign up.
What is your name again?
Mary Brunner,
How do you spell
B-R-U-N-N-E-R.
that?
B-R-U-N-N-E-R.
B-R-U-N-N-E-R.
And the address?
655 James Farm Road.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe I'm a little late in addressing you all, but I watched some of the 29th, and I think my blood was boiling when I heard someone referred to the property as blight. I didn't know God made blight. But, and the council, the woman who was here earlier, I don't recall her name, was almost trying to scare us into something worse could happen with this property. It could be developed into something worse. But something better could come also, such as 1-acre homes, which I thought it was zoned for. Maybe the zoning doesn't mean anything, but maybe I'm just naive. And to say it's their property and to do what they want with it, no, I can't build an in-law that's separate from my home on my property, can I? No. So I can't even believe we're still talking about it, as if it's almost a done deal as long as they switch it up a little bit. I thought it was zoned for 1 acre. And our property, all the homes in that area, you tell me my property value, a neighborhood that's all 1 acre zoning, their property values are going to be higher than a neighborhood where it's a little more condensed, shall we say. And so can we all sue them for the loss, the diminishing property values when our values of our homes go down after this, if this goes in? I beg you, and I applaud the people who have the courage to stand up against these people. I beg you to not approve this, because it is, as I think Barry Knott said it, referring to the Ferry Boulevard. He was claiming it was harmonious in relation to the location of existing development when it was denied. I say, obviously, the size and intensity is not harmonious in relation to the location of existing development. Please don't approve this. I'm all for affordable housing, but I think there are many more appropriate places in the town, and it can't just all be about money, because it is going to cost the town money. And I think we should all sue for the mental aggravation that they've caused the entire neighborhood. Thank you.
Anyone else? Just remember, though, that this discussion right now is on the tax amendment itself and not any future projects that people might have heard of.
Yes. Good evening, Madam Chairman, Mr. Bansky, members of the board. My name is Charles Kerr. I live at 120 Candlewood Road, Stratford, and I'm in strong opposition to the Zoning Commission deleting these fees. If anything, I think you should increase the fees. The proposed affordable housing on James Farm Road is going to be a large fee for the taxpayers to incur, that being planning and zoning, you folks here, your late hours, the police department, fire department, and all necessary municipal offices that have to go through the plans. And I don't think the taxpayers should have to absorb the fees for putting our people to this task. And in conclusion, I did read and I agree with Jay Hibansky's that the proposed amendment to the schedule appears to be inconsistent with the Town of Stratford 2013 Plan Conservation and Development. And also, it was noted that the town is within its statutory rights to consider an affordable housing application as a special case, thus by setting the fees. Anyone have a question for me?
No, thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Beverly Burchard, 497A Iroquois Lane, Stratford. And I understand that the discussion is about a reduction in the fee. Listening to you gentlemen, I think that with all of the people that are going to be involved in going forward to check out what is necessary for anything to go through, the fee is much too low. It should be considered on a sliding scale, maybe $150 for the first 5 units, and then going up from there, so that once you get to something where we're talking about 100 units, then perhaps your fees should be much, much higher. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Gerald Gray of 29 Shoreline Drive, and I don't have anything prepared specifically to address the fee schedule. I would more like to go to the point of something Attorney Kubik brought up, that this is anything but a charitable organization or a quest to help people by providing affordable housing. It is, if one looks, and I've brought a handout for everyone, I've done the research, which most people I'm sure are pretty familiar with, of the background and the financial status of the principals as well as the attorney and the counsel involved in this organization, 500 North LLC. And I just see this as a Trojan horse. These are people that are a money-making operation. The principals have dubious backgrounds and history, and using this Trojan horse to facilitate, really ramming in some kind of affordable housing based on changing these various statutes and things within the town is just, look over here, not over here. So I am against anything changing the fees within the context of that being, as I said, I think a Trojan horse that does not benefit the town or the people of the town whatsoever. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Miss.
Excuse
Miss.
me. So that's it. What is your name, please? Could you?
Gerald Gray of 29 Shoreline Drive.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anyone else? Is there anyone that would like to speak, whether it be against or for? Neither against, no.
Good evening. My name is Frances Voigt, 480 James Farm Road, Stratford, Connecticut. Can everybody hear me? Some of our previous speakers.
Could you spell your last name, please?
Last name you didn't.
V as in Victor, O-I-G-H-T. Voigt. I'm totally unprepared. However, I'm going to speak anyway. Because Stratford has enough expenses, I know I have enough expenses. I'm hanging on to the property I have, and I really don't want anything of my taxes going any higher. I'm retired now, I paid my dues, and I'd like to have a little comfort if you don't mind. However, Stratford, before we go ahead with anything like this, ought to examine their roads. When you come in off of these trucks are not little, they're huge. And you're talking about, I don't know how many tons and tons of dirt or whatever the heck they're going to do. I don't know. I'm a nurse. I'm not a contractor. But coming off of 110, as you proceed up Main Street, Putney, you got a ditch on your right. And you've got a pond on the left. The ditch, if it's icy out and you have bad weather, you better be careful. You're going to land in the ditch. As you come up Main Street, Putney, you have beautiful homes. I hate to see for sale signs. I grew up where I live now on James Farm Road. I can never remember a for sale sign. I really can't. Only lately. Something's not okay. We have to repair those roads to handle those trucks. That's more money on us.
Excuse me, I just would like to make sure that you're talking about the tax amendment.
Well, the taxes are going to go up if they wreck our roads.
The text amendment that is being presented tonight. The
Well,
text amendment.
I thought that included
No,
expenses.
it did not. No, it does not. It
Well,
only
then-
includes the text amendment that he is proposing to change or to line of 830G
Affordable housing
projects, for the fees for that to come forward.
Well, all I know is I don't want any more fees of any kind. But you're on a slippery slope already. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioners, do you have any other questions or any discussion?
Not at this time, Madam Chair.
Make-
Unless Attorney Dallas has a rebuttal of any kind.
Rebuttal.
Yeah.
Going to the planning commission, Jay explained that to me, and I have no problem with that. I know you're keeping this open. Thank you very much, though.
Thank you. Commissioner Paul?
Just want to acknowledge the audience and the feedback today from the public. It's really enlightening, and I'm glad you're here to voice your concerns. And we take it very seriously, and thank you very much for coming out.
With Commissioner Fuller?
Oh, yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Also, I thank not just Attorney Bellis, but everyone who's participated in this hearing tonight, just more for public education's purpose. There's no final decision that's made tonight whether this text amendment is local law or not, local zoning regulations or not. And that, if the commission tonight could refer it to the Planning Commission, or it could table and deliberate more on the subject. The next step after zoning would be going back to the Planning Commission. They provide their insights, and then it would come back to us again for more review too. So this is just one step in a long journey to deliberate on what would be our text fees to affordable housing or other petitions.
Do I have a motion to leave it open for the Planning Commission to
I
respond?
think that's an administrative session vote to refer to planning.
Do we leave it, we leave it
I
open?
think the motion would be to close this particular item and then to adjourn public hearing.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Motion to close the petition for the text amendment.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. A motion to adjourn the public hearing?
Motion to,
Well, excuse
We
me,
have a
Madam Chairman, you're
motion.
just going to table it, you're going to keep the public hearing open, you're just going to
Yeah.
table it.
Yeah.
Pending the Planning Commission consideration.
No, this was to close.
Well, if we table it, we can't refer it to the planning commission then.
You can.
Oh, so it has been referred?
Yes.
yes.
When was
By
it referred?
regulation, it has.
Any text amendment is automatically referred to the planning commission prior to the zoning commission making a decision.
Okay, so the planning commission has already made its...
They have it. They were unable to meet in this month.
Okay, so there's nothing we could do tonight anyways.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
Correct.
All right, so the motion to table.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye. Motion to adjourn public hearing tonight?
Motion to adjourn public hearing. Do I have a motion? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
We'll have a short recess so we can change chair people. Thank you.